Hello and welcome back to Vale Noir. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into dark, chilling tales veiled in noir, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1. It was nightfall when the rain began. At first, Jill barely noticed it. The sound started softly above the campus library, little taps against the tin roof, scattered and uneven. Then the rhythm grew steadier, louder, until it filled the empty building with a hollow metallic drumming. Jill stood between two shelves with a stack of returned books in her arms, listening to it echo through the long white room. She was glad she had brought her umbrella. The library was nearly empty by then. Nearly, because Jill had learned not to call any building empty until she had personally checked every aisle, every study desk, every corner where tired students liked to hide with laptops and energy drinks. The campus library was not the kind of library people imagined when they thought of old books and warm lamps. It was not cozy. There were no deep wooden shelves, no soft armchairs, no quiet little corners that smelled of dust and paper. This library looked clinical. The floor was bright white tile so polished it reflected the ceiling lights. Round blue fixtures hung overhead every few steps, casting a cold glow over everything. Even the bookshelves were white, though their surfaces were rough and matte, a strange contrast against the mirror-like floor. Most of the books were useful. Medicine, statistics, research methods, numbers, more numbers. Jill had always thought it was a shame how little fiction the library carried. But that was how the university worked. Reading was only encouraged if it helped your grades, your career, or your research. Reading for pleasure was treated like a soft weakness people were expected to outgrow. She was tired of useful things. Her medical studies had drained her. Her part-time work at the library had drained her too. By the end of most nights, she wanted nothing more than to curl up with a book that had no charts, no symptoms, no diagrams of organs, no footnotes, and no exam questions hiding between the lines. But there were shelves to restock, so she worked. She returned a thick book on infectious disease to its place, then a book on surgical procedure, then another on probability theory. Her shoes clicked softly against the tile as she moved. The rain hammered harder above her. By the time she finished, the building had taken on that strange late-night feeling all public spaces get after closing. The lights were still on. The doors still existed. Everything still looked normal. But without people, the place felt wrong, like a body without a pulse. Jill checked the front desk, shut down the computer, grabbed her bag, and walked toward the exit. She pushed down on the metal door handle and stepped outside. Cold, wet air touched her face. She opened her clear plastic umbrella in the doorway before walking down the concrete steps. Rain hit the umbrella in heavy bursts, running across the plastic and twisting lines. Through it, she could see distorted shapes of the streetlights and buildings beyond. Her apartment was not far, down one street, a left turn, then a few more minutes on foot. She pulled her coat tighter and started walking. The sound of her heels against the concrete stairs echoed even through the downpour. For a moment, that was the only human sound in the night. Then someone spoke behind her. "Excuse me?" Jill spun around, the umbrella tilted in her hand, sending a sheet of water down one side of her coat. "Who's there?" The nearest campus light flickered through the curtain of water, showing only the curb, part of the sidewalk, and the shape of a tree bending slightly in the wind. A figure moved near the bottom of the steps. "My bad," a man said. "I didn't mean to scare you." He stepped closer. Jill caught a glimpse of a jacket, a hood, a nervous hand raised slightly, like he wanted to show he was harmless. "We talked at the library," he said. "I'm Kyle, if you remember." More importantly, she knew she had been alone at the end of her shift. The library had been empty, which meant he had either hidden somewhere inside after closing, or waited outside for her to leave. Neither option made her feel safe. "You following me?" she asked. "No," he said quickly. "No, I mean, sorry, I guess this looks bad." "It does. I just thought I might not get to see you again," and he paused, sounding embarrassed. "To be honest, I was hoping maybe I could get your phone number." Jill took a few steps back. Her heart was beating faster now. The rain seemed louder. She glanced toward the street, trying to judge how quickly she could reach the main road if she needed to run. Then something struck her umbrella. Not rain. Something heavier. The clear plastic dipped above her head. Jill gasped and gripped the handle tighter. For one awful second, she thought a hand had landed on top of it. She looked up through the umbrella. Something pink and wet was spread across the plastic. It looked like a strip of meat. No, not meat. Something more like intestines, slick and folded, stretched across the top of the umbrella like it had fallen from the sky. "What the hell is that?" Jill whispered. The thing slid slowly toward the rim. She gave the umbrella one sharp shake. It dropped onto the pavement with a wet slap. Kyle did not seem to notice. Or he was pretending not to. "I have a pen," he said, "if you want to write your number down." The smart thing would have been to walk away, but the campus was dark. Her apartment was nearby. She wanted the conversation over. She wanted him gone. She wanted to stop standing in the rain with a strange man and a piece of bloody flesh on the ground between them. Fine. She snatched the pen from him and scribbled her number on the back of a receipt he held out. "There," she said. "Happy?" Kyle took it carefully. "Yes." His voice sounded relieved. Too relieved. Jill turned and walked away without another word. She looked over her shoulder several times as she went. Kyle stayed near the library steps, almost swallowed by rain and darkness. At least, she thought he did. By the time she reached her apartment building, she could no longer see him. Under the cover of the entrance, Jill shook out her umbrella. More wet red clumps fell from it and hit the pavement. She stared down at them. A dead bird, maybe. That was what she told herself. Something must have been caught in the storm. A bird, an animal, something torn apart by a hawk and dropped. That explanation was disgusting, but ordinary enough to be useful. She typed the code into the door panel. The lock clicked. The glass doors slid open. Jill stepped inside and turned down the hall toward her apartment. Just before reaching the elevator, she glanced behind her one last time, checking for Kyle. Her eyes fell to the floor. She froze. Bloody footprints trailed behind her. Her footprints, each step she had taken across the lobby, had left a red print on the pale tile. Jill stared at them until the hallway seemed to tilt. Then everything went dark. When she woke, she was sitting upright in bed. Her shirt clung to her back with sweat. Her breath came fast. For several seconds, she did not know where she was. The room was dim with morning light. Clothes were scattered at the foot of her bed. A textbook lay open on the floor. Her phone was on the nightstand. Nightmare. That was her first thought. A horrible dream. She could not remember all of it clearly. Rain, a man, something wet on her umbrella, blood on the floor. She rubbed both hands over her face. It was Sunday. The campus was closed. No library shift, no classes, no reason to leave early. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. During the week, she usually heard the children upstairs getting ready for school, running too heavily across the floor while their mother shouted after them. On weekends, the building was usually slower, but not silent. That morning, the silence felt complete. Jill gathered the clothes from the floor and threw them into the washing machine. She moved like someone trying not to think too hard. She wanted coffee, a shower, maybe breakfast. Then she walked into the living room and stopped. Her boots were on the mat by the door. A red puddle had formed around them. In the morning light, there was no mistaking it. Blood. Jill's stomach turned. The memory of the lobby came rushing back. The footprints. The thing on the umbrella. The rain. She grabbed a cloth from the kitchen and crouched by the mat. Her hands shook as she wiped at the boots. The red came away thick and sticky. The rain outside had stopped. "My umbrella," she whispered. She had left it on the porch outside the apartment door. Maybe the rain had washed it clean. She went to the door and pulled it open. Then she saw the city. Everything was red. For a moment, her brain could not understand what her eyes were seeing. The morning mist hanging over the street was tinted pink. The sidewalk was streaked crimson. The road looked as if someone had poured thin blood over the asphalt and let it dry in uneven patches. Across from her building stood a large chestnut tree. Its leaves were red, not autumn red, wet red. The trunk was stained from top to bottom, and dark pools had collected around the roots. Jill gripped the doorframe. The blood had fallen like rain. It had covered everything. Cars, benches, windows, the street. The world outside smelled faintly metallic and rotten. She stepped back and closed the door with a shaking hand. There had to be something on the news. There had to be sirens, emergency alerts, police, campus announcements, anything. She grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. Static. Every channel. Static. "What is going on?" she whispered, though there was no one to answer. She grabbed her phone and started calling people. Her mother first. Voicemail. Not too strange. It was early. Then Emmett, a friend from university who was always awake before everyone else. No answer. George, her coworker at the library. No answer. Another friend. No answer. Each unanswered call made the apartment feel smaller. Jill stood in the middle of the living room, phone pressed to her ear, listening to ringing that led nowhere. Then someone knocked on her apartment door. 3 firm knocks. Jill nearly dropped the phone. She backed away instinctively. "Hello," she called. A man answered from the hallway. "Hello there." His voice was deep and carried a heavy accent. "Where is everyone? I've tried every door in the building. You're the first to answer." Jill crept to the peephole. A large man stood outside. He wore a dark brown leather jacket that was worn and peeling at the shoulders. His beard was white and scruffy. His skin looked deeply pale, almost gray in the harsh hallway light. He was big enough that she had to angle her gaze up through the peephole to see his face. "I tried calling people too," Jill said through the door. Nobody answered. "Strange morning," the man said. That was one way to put it. "My name is Sava," he continued. "I'm looking for help for my daughter. She is not acting like herself. She needs a hospital, but the buses aren't running and I have no car. I was hoping someone could drive her." Jill swallowed. "I'm sorry. I don't have a car either." "Ah, then I am sorry to bother you." Jill hesitated. Then she opened the door. "Wait." The man turned back. He was even larger in person. Tall, broad, with heavy black boots and dark circles under both eyes. He looked like he had not slept all night. "I might be able to help," Jill said. "I'm studying medicine at the university. I'm not a doctor, but I could take a look." "Thank you." Jill grabbed her boots and followed him down the hall. As they walked, Sava spoke without turning around. "I did not realize she was playing in the backyard until it was too late. The rain started suddenly. Next thing I knew, she came running inside, soaked completely red." Jill's skin prickled. "I dried her off," he continued. "Washed her, changed her clothes, but it only got worse. This morning, she will not wake." Sava pushed it open. His apartment was small and ordinary, with a layout almost identical to Jill's. The kitchen island was covered with dirty dishes. Beer cans were stacked near the sink. A blanket had fallen halfway off the couch in the living room. "This is my daughter," Sava said. "Aurora." The girl lay on the couch with her eyes closed. Jill stopped. Aurora's skin was red. Not stained red. Deep, swollen crimson, like the blood had soaked into her and stayed there. Her face was bloated and wrinkled the way skin looks after too long in water. Her lips were dark, her hands lay stiff at her sides. Jill forced herself to move. "I'll do what I can." She knelt beside the couch and touched the girl's forehead. "She's freezing." "I'll get a heated blanket," Sava said. "She needs a real doctor," Jill said, looking up at him. "Keep knocking on doors. There has to be someone else in the building." Sava nodded, but one hand went to his chest. He gripped the leather jacket just above his heart. "You okay?" Jill asked. "I'll be fine," he said. "I'll look around." He left the room. Jill turned back to Aurora. The girl was breathing. Slowly, but breathing. Her chest rose and fell beneath the blanket. Jill gently rolled her onto her side, trying to check for any injury or airway obstruction. Aurora jolted. Every muscle in the girl's body spasmed at once. Jill jerked back. "Aurora!" The girl's eyes snapped open. Jill's heart lurched. Aurora sat upright. Her movements were loose and wrong, like her body had remembered standing, but not why. She swung her legs off the couch. Her feet hit the carpet. She stood, wobbling like a newborn animal. "Aurora, it's okay," Jill said, trying to keep her voice calm. "Can you hear me?" The girl did not look at her. She walked past Jill. Through the living room. Through the kitchen. Out the open apartment door. "Aurora," Sava's voice boomed from the hallway. "What's come over you? Where are you going?" Jill ran after them. "I don't know what happened," she said. She just got up. Together they followed the girl down the stairs and through the building lobby. At the front doors, Jill stopped cold. They were not alone. The street outside was packed. Hundreds of people stood in the red morning mist, maybe more. They filled the sidewalks, the road, the gaps between parked cars. They swayed silently on their feet, all of them stained the same deep red as Aurora. Wrinkled skin, blank faces, empty eyes. "I'll be damned," Sava whispered. Aurora walked into the crowd and disappeared among the bodies. "Aurora," Sava shouted. "Sava, wait." But he was already pushing through the doors. Jill followed because she could not think of what else to do. Outside, the air smelled of metal, rain, and damp skin. The crowd barely reacted as they moved through it. Shoulders brushed against Jill. Cold, wet hands touched her sleeves. Their faces were slack, eyes open but unfocused. She tried not to look at them. Instead, she kept her gaze raised toward the telephone poles lining the street. The power lines hummed in the damp air. Above them, the clouds looked heavy again. It was going to rain. Then Jill saw something in the sky. Patterns, not clouds. Ornate, shifting designs moved in the red-tinted mist above the street. Thin shapes, almost transparent, curling and folding like pieces of glass made from smoke. One of them broke away. It arched through the air like an eel. Then it dove. It struck a young blond man in a suit standing near a parked car. His body twitched. His brown eyes changed. They swelled, filling with red liquid from behind. They bulged past his eyelids, wet and shining. His blank face twisted into something hungry. Then he turned toward Jill. "Sava," she whispered. "I see it," Sava said. He had stopped a few feet ahead of her. More of the shapes descended from the mist, striking other silent figures. One by one, eyes turned red, faces sharpened, heads lifted. The crowd began to notice them. "Across the street," Jill said. "The shops we can hide inside." Sava nodded. They pushed through the bodies toward a row of storefronts. The nearest was a rundown comic shop with faded posters in the window. Colorful covers were displayed behind dusty glass. Inside, the lights were off, but Jill could see shelves and cardboard boxes stacked across the floor. They were almost there when someone lunged from the right. A woman with red eyes and bared teeth. Sava. The woman bit into his wrist. The sound was wet and tearing. Sava roared and threw her off. She hit the pavement with a heavy slap and rolled under the shop window. Blood ran down his arm from the circular bite mark. Jill grabbed the door handle and pulled. Locked. No, she breathed. She shoved harder. The door rattled but did not open. Behind her, Sava made a strangled sound. She turned. He was gripping his chest again, one hand over his heart. His face had gone even paler. His eyes were clenched shut, and his breathing came fast and shallow. Sava, he staggered. I'm not leaving you, Jill said. We just need to get inside. He swung one arm and pushed her away. Not violently, but firmly. Go, no. Run. Jill looked at the bite on his wrist, the blood dripping from his elbow. The hand clamped over his heart. Behind him, more red-eyed people pushed through the crowd toward them. Go, Sava said again. Jill ran. She hated herself for it immediately, but she ran. The crowd was worse now. The blank red figures still swayed in place, but the ones with changed eyes moved differently. They followed sound, movement, life. Jill shoved between bodies, trying not to slip on the wet pavement. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. For one wild second, hope shot through her. Someone was calling back. Her mother, Emmett, anyone. She pulled the phone out while still moving. Unknown number, she almost ignored it. Then she answered. Oh, a nervous male voice said. You did answer. I wasn't sure if you would. Hi. Jill froze for half a second. You're the guy from last night. Kyle, don't hang up, he said quickly. Please. I've gone through everyone in my contacts, and you're the only one who answered. The same happened to me, Jill said. Nobody's picking up. We might be the only two normal people left. Maybe, if we meet, I might not. I'm capable on my own, Jill snapped. I know, Kyle said. I know. But we need to get out of the city, right? We have a better chance together. What do you mean, get out? At the city entrances, Kyle said, lowering his voice. They put up concrete barriers. Military, police, I don't know. They're shooting any of the red ones that get close. Nobody is getting in or out. Jill closed her eyes. So it was contained. Or they were trying to contain it. We should meet, Kyle said. Please, the library. It's close to both of us, right? We know the building. We can figure out what to do there. Jill looked up. The sky had darkened again. A raindrop hit the back of her neck. She flinched as the wetness slid down her spine. Another drop struck the pavement near her foot. Red, I'll meet you at the library, she said. Then she hung up. The rain began softly at first, just like the night before. Jill pulled up her hood and started walking fast. Behind her, somewhere in the red street, she heard Sava scream. Then the scream cut off. Jill did not turn around. She kept her eyes on the telephone poles, the street signs, the gray shape of the campus buildings ahead. The rain grew heavier. Drops struck her hood, her shoulders, her hands. She tried not to think about the patterns moving in the mist above. She tried not to think about Kyle, waiting at the library, the same man who had somehow found her after closing and asked for her number in the dark. But as she hurried through the red morning, one thought kept repeating in her mind. The city was sealed, the phones were dead, the rain was starting again, and the library, cold and white and clinical, suddenly felt less like a shelter and more like the only trap that had been waiting for her all along. Story 2, where is this treehouse my kid keeps talking about? That was the post I saw in the neighborhood Facebook group. I remember sitting at my kitchen table staring at those words for a long time. I had only lived in the neighborhood for maybe 2 or 3 months, but I understood the question immediately. My son, Jamie, had been talking about the same thing every night before bed. Dad, can I go to the treehouse tomorrow? The first time he asked, I said yes without thinking much about it. We were new in the neighborhood, and I figured he had heard about it from other kids. Maybe there was a little wooden treehouse in someone's backyard? Or one of those neighborhood spots children seem to find before adults ever know it exists. I thought it might be good for him. Jamie needed friends. We both did, honestly. It had been just the two of us for a while, and I was trying hard to be the kind of father he deserved. Some days I thought I was doing okay. Other days I felt like I was barely holding our little life together with tape and apologies. So when he asked about the treehouse, I said, "Sure, buddy. We'll go soon." Not the day after. Life got in the way, or that was what I told myself. Work, groceries, laundry, bills, the constant tiredness that comes with being the only adult in the house. Jamie kept asking, and I kept saying, "Soon." Then one night, as I tucked him into bed, he looked at me with those big, serious eyes and said, "Dad, you promised." That hit me harder than it should have. He wasn't angry. That would have been easier. He was just disappointed. Quietly disappointed the way kids get when they are learning that adults don't always mean what they say. I looked at his little face and knew I had to do better. So the next morning I woke up early and made breakfast. Scrambled eggs with sugar. I know that sounds disgusting to some people, but Jamie loved them that way. His papa had taught him the recipe, and Jamie treated it like some great family secret. It wasn't healthy, and it probably wasn't even good, but every time I made it, he smiled like I had given him the world. That morning was no different. He sat at the table in his pajamas, hair sticking up in the back, kicking his feet under the chair. When I set the plate down, his whole face lit up. That smile of his always looked a little painful, like it stretched wider than it should. But it was his smile, tooth gaps and all, and he wore it proudly. After we ate, I washed the dishes and leaned against the counter. "You still up for visiting that treehouse?" There it was again, that bright, toothless, painful smile. Really, really, I felt good in that moment, like I was nailing this single-parent thing, at least for one morning. I expected him to tell me the name of a park, or maybe point down the street towards some kid's house. Instead, he hopped out of his chair, grabbed my hand, and pulled me toward the back door. "Come on," he said. "Where are we going?" "To the treehouse." He opened the back door and led me outside, into our own backyard. The yard was small, fenced in on all sides with weathered wood. The grass was still wet with morning dew. In the middle of it stood the tree. It was the biggest thing in the yard, tall and old, with a thick trunk and branches that stretched over part of the fence and toward the roof. Jamie pointed at it. "There." I stared at the tree. There was no treehouse. I had been in that yard plenty of times since moving in. I had mowed around that tree. I had raked leaves under it. I had looked up into the branches when I heard squirrels fighting there. There was no platform, no boards, no ladder, no little house hidden in the leaves. "Buddy," I said carefully, "there's no treehouse in that tree." Jamie laughed, not like I had said something scary, like I had said something stupid. "No, Dad, you can't see it from down here. We have to climb." I looked up again. The branches were thick, but not that thick. If there had been any kind of structure up there, I would have seen it. Still, he was smiling at me, excited and sure. I thought maybe this was one of those imagination games kids play. Maybe the treehouse was pretend. Maybe he only wanted me to play along. So I did. "All right," I said, "show me." He took my hand again and led me to the trunk. I hadn't climbed a tree in years. I had forgotten how much harder it is as an adult. Jamie, of course, moved like gravity barely applied to him. He grabbed a low branch, swung one foot up, and pulled himself into the tree with the quick, easy motion of an 8-year-old who had no fear and too much energy. I followed much more slowly. The bark was rough under my hands. My foot slipped once, and I grabbed the trunk harder than I needed to. I had never been great with heights, but I didn't want Jamie to know that. Every kid wants to believe his dad is made of steel, at least for a little while. So I kept climbing and whispered to myself, "Don't look down. Just don't look down." He giggled above me. "Come on, Dad." I looked up, keeping my eyes on the sky between the branches. Leaves shifted overhead. Sunlight broke through in bright pieces. Jamie moved from branch to branch like a little spider monkey. Then he got too far. My father instincts finally overpowered my pride. "Jamie," I called. "That's high enough. Come back down." No answer. "Jamie?" I stopped climbing and looked around. I could not see him. At first I told myself he was hidden by leaves. The tree was big and the branches forked in strange directions. Maybe he had moved to the other side of the trunk. "Jamie, answer me." There were no birds, no dogs barking, no cars passing on the street beyond the fence. Nothing but wind. A cold breeze moved over me. That was the first moment I realized something was wrong. The air felt colder than it should have, thin almost, like I was much higher than I knew. I tightened my grip on the trunk and finally made myself look down. The ground was gone. Not far away, gone below me, there was only more tree. The trunk continued down into open sky, stretching farther than my eyes could follow. Branches reached out in every direction like a twisted ladder built for giants. There was no backyard, no fence, no house, no world. Only the tree. The same tree, somehow but impossible now, endless above, endless below. The vertigo hit me so hard I nearly slipped. My stomach lurched. My body leaned backward without permission, and for one sickening second, I felt myself start to fall. I threw both arms around the trunk and hugged it with everything I had. The bark dug into my cheek. I closed my eyes and held on. My fingers locked against the wood. My knuckles ached. My breathing came in short, ugly bursts. I could feel tears forcing their way out even though I did not want to cry. I stayed like that for a long time. Cheek pressed to bark, eyes squeezed shut, the same way Jamie squeezed his eyes when he smiled too hard. Jamie. The thought struck me like a slap. For a few minutes, I had forgotten about him. That was the worst part. Not the endless tree, not the missing ground, not the fear. For a few minutes, I had been so afraid for myself that I forgot my boy was somewhere above me. What kind of father does that? I forced my eyes open. The world had not fixed itself. There was still nothing but sky and tree. Branches stretched out in all directions, thick and crooked, some large enough to sit on, others thin and claw-like. The trunk rose upward forever, disappearing into pale light far above me. Had I died? Had I fallen from the tree and cracked my head open in the yard? Was this some dying dream? Maybe. But if I was dead, there was nothing I could do about it. If I was not dead, Jamie was still up there. So I climbed. Every sensible part of me wanted to go down. Down meant home. Down meant the ground should be there somewhere. Down was what my brain screamed for. But Jamie had gone up. So I went up. I climbed with fear first. Then anger, then desperation. My hands scraped against bark. My knees bumped branches. My arms shook. I kept calling his name until my throat hurt. Jamie, nothing. Jamie, answer me. Only silence. I climbed until my hands were torn. Blood collected in the creases of my palms and smeared dark lines across the bark. My muscles burned, my legs cramped. The sun moved across the sky, which made no sense because I did not know what sky I was under anymore. Hours passed, or what felt like hours. Eventually, it began to get dark. That terrified me in a new way. I had no flashlight, no food, no water, no idea where I was. The cold grew worse as the light faded. The tree creaked softly around me, though there was barely any wind now. I stopped on a thick branch and broke down. I cried like I had not cried since Jamie's mother left. I cried until I could barely breathe. My hands throbbed. My body hurt everywhere. My son was gone, and I was stuck in a tree that had no end. After a while, I screamed. Not words at first, just a raw, broken sound that tore out of me and vanished into the empty air. It sounded horrible, like an animal dying. No echo came back. The silence swallowed it. I sat there for I don't know how long, straddling the branch with my forehead pressed to the trunk. I was so tired that my thoughts began to drift. My eyes closed without permission. Then I jolted awake with the feeling of falling. Except this time, it was real. My body slipped sideways off the branch. I grabbed at anything I could reach. One hand caught a smaller branch, and my shoulder screamed with pain as my weight pulled against it. My feet kicked at empty air. For one awful second, I hung there, staring down into forever. Then I hauled myself back up, shaking so badly I almost slipped again. I nearly died. Or woke up. That thought came suddenly: what if falling was the way out? What if this was a dream and the only way to leave was to let go? Then another thought followed. What if Jamie had already fallen? I started crying again, but quietly this time. I only noticed because one tear fell from my cheek onto my thigh, cold against my skin. That tiny feeling snapped me back. No, I was not letting go. Not while Jamie might still be somewhere above me. I needed to rest. If I kept climbing like this, I would make a mistake and fall. I took off my belt with trembling hands and looped it around my waist and the trunk, tying myself as tightly as I could. It was not safe, not really, but it was something. I leaned against the tree. I pictured Jamie's smile. That smile had kept me going through every hard day since he was born. Every sleepless night, every bill I could barely pay, every moment when I doubted I was enough. His smile was the reason I kept moving. I held that image in my mind until sleep dragged me under. When I woke up, I was being eaten. Pain ripped through my thigh. My eyes flew open. Birds, black birds clustered around me, silent and frantic, tearing at my legs and arms with sharp beaks. One had a strip of flesh in its mouth. Another pecked at my hand. Another stood on my knee, digging into me like I was already dead. I screamed and thrashed. The birds made no sound. That somehow made it worse. Their wings beat around me in perfect silence. Their beaks struck with greedy precision. I fumbled at the belt, freed it from the trunk, and swung it wildly. The buckle hit one bird and knocked it away. I whipped at the others until they lifted off, carrying pieces of me as they disappeared into the branches. I sat there gasping. Blood ran down my legs and dripped into the endless space below. My thigh was torn open in several places. My hands looked shredded. My body felt weaker than before. But I kept climbing. I had no choice. Every movement hurt. The wounds in my thigh pulled and burned. My palms left bloody prints behind. The bark seemed to bite into me now. I climbed until my vision blurred and my arms refused to work. Finally, I had to stop again. I lowered myself onto a wide branch, chest heaving. That was when I remembered my phone. It sounds insane now. I know that. How could I not think of it before? But I barely carried my phone with me in the house. I tried not to use it around Jamie because I didn't want to set a bad example. Half the time, I forgot it existed. With shaking hands, I pulled it from my pocket. No cracks. Battery still alive. I almost laughed. I called 911. The phone rang and rang. No one answered. It did not go to voicemail. It did not disconnect. It just kept ringing forever. I hung up and tried again. Same thing. Again. Same thing. A normal person would have panicked at that, but after all that silence, the ringing felt like a gift, a sound, something human or close to human. I held the phone near my ear and listened to it ring while I sat bleeding on the branch. I must have stayed that way for hours. The sun began to set again. I was failing Jamie. I knew that. But my body could not stand the thought of climbing anymore. Every part of me hurt. Every breath took effort. I could feel myself breaking down. So I opened the Notes app on my phone and started typing. At first, I only wanted to kill time. Then I thought maybe someone would find the phone someday. Maybe if I didn't survive, someone would read what happened and know to look for Jamie. That is why I wrote most of this. I ended it with a request. Please find Jamie. Then I lost consciousness again. What you just read was written months ago. After what happened next, I forgot I had even typed it. I found the note recently while looking through my phone, and reading it made everything come back so clearly that I vomited in my kitchen sink. I am finishing it now because people need to know. They need to watch their children. They need to stay away from the treehouse. I fell. That is what happened after the note. My body finally gave out. Maybe I shifted wrong in my sleep. Maybe the branch moved. Maybe the tree simply decided it was done with me. All I know is that one moment there was darkness, and the next my body slammed into the ground. Real ground. Wet grass. The impact woke me up. Pain exploded through me, but I barely had time to process it because the world was back. My backyard, my wooden fence, my house. The normal sky, the normal tree. For 1 second, relief hit me so hard I almost sobbed. Then I looked up. Jamie was in the branches. My little boy was twisted among them. High above me, his body caught in the tree like something placed there. His eyes were glazed. His limbs bent at impossible angles. His skin was pale. His clothes were torn, and that same painful, toothless smile was stretched across his face. The birds were on him, black birds, silent and busy, pulling at him piece by piece. Some had built part of a nest around him. Twigs and leaves were tangled into his clothes and hair. They moved over his small body like they had claimed him. I screamed until my throat tore. My son was dead in the tree above our backyard, and he was smiling like he was home, like he had found exactly where he was meant to be. Near the end of my scream, I realized something else. The world was not silent anymore. Other people were screaming too. From the yards around mine, through fences and over rooftops, came the sounds of mothers, fathers, grandparents, and neighbors crying out in horror. One voice became many. Their screams rose together into the morning air, twisting into a terrible song. I dragged myself onto my side and looked toward the fence. Beyond it, another parent was standing in their backyard, staring up into their tree. Then another. The neighborhood Facebook post flashed through my mind. Where is this treehouse my kid keeps talking about? Now we all knew. The children had found it. Not in one yard, not in one tree. All of them had found the treehouse, and the birds were already building their nests. Story 3. There was an incident people still talk about when they talk about how our town became a town at all, back when the place was barely more than a handful of families surrounded by fields. Most outsiders, if they've heard of us, only know the version that sounds clean and simple. They've heard about the road projects in the 1950s, the push for better infrastructure, the small rural settlements that slowly turned into official towns. They picture neat maps, survey flags, men in hard hats, and paperwork stamped in county offices. What they don't picture is how old the land already felt before anything official ever existed here, and how much of the town's history is really just stories that families kept repeating until the stories hardened into facts. Before the roads and the town center and the diner and the church, there was a pig farm. It had been there for 3 generations by the time the first real wave of post-war development reached our area. Local people used to say the original family settled the property 4 years before the Spanish-American War, which was their way of saying the place was old enough that nobody remembered the beginning. The farmhouse was the kind built to last, with thick beams and a basement that always stayed cold. The barn was big, ugly, practical. The smell of animals and feed never fully left, not even in winter. For a long time, that farm was the area. Everything else was just land. When state and county road planning started creeping closer in the early 50s, toward the end of Truman's first term, the family on the farm resisted it, the grandfather especially. According to the old-timers, he didn't like strangers stepping onto his land with measuring tools, and he didn't like the idea of a paved road making it easier for people to come through. In the end, the road didn't cut directly through their property. It passed about 1.25 miles away, close enough that you could hear trucks sometimes, far enough that the farm still felt like it sat apart from the world. That's when the first developers arrived. People called them developers later, but they were farmers, really, men who saw cheap land and a future. They came around, got acquainted with the pig farm family, and slowly more people moved in. At first, it was only about 3 families, and even that felt like a crowd compared to what had been there. The town didn't start with a petition and a proud announcement. It started the way many rural places start, one new house, then another. Someone's cousin buying land, someone's brother-in-law setting up a small operation, a few people deciding to stop passing through and begin staying. By the time 1954 rolled around, it was recognized officially as a town, but the reality came earlier. The year before, they held a Thanksgiving-style communal feast, and that feast became one of those turning points people use when they don't have exact records. It was the first time the families gathered and spoke like they were building something together, not just living near each other. More people came. Another family. 2 former politicians from the Northwest who wanted quieter lives and had money to invest. The population still wasn't much. People later claimed it was about 24 residents at that time, but it was enough that the place began to feel like a real settlement. The original farm family surprisingly softened about it. They started to appreciate having neighbors, having hands to help during hard seasons, having other voices in the air besides animals and wind. Even the grandfather came around. That detail always mattered to the people who tell the story, because the grandfather had been the one who fought change the hardest. Yet once the town formed, he had the best relationship with 2 hunters from a family that settled in 1953. He'd talk with them like they were old friends, trade stories, share coffee, point out tracks in the mud as if he'd been waiting his whole life for someone else to take the land seriously the way he did. He lived to 97. He died in spring of 1956. His death didn't just feel like one man dying. In people's minds, it felt like the end of the settlement's first age. They built the town center not long after, and they placed his tomb beneath it as if the town itself stood on him. The grave was blessed after burial by a Methodist priest who moved into town about a month later. That part is all written down. What comes after is the part people argue about even now. Because by the late 50s, the town center was being built up properly. The diner was open. The church had regular sermons. Folks were talking about a town hall, a records room, a police station, and all the things that make a place feel permanent. That's when a family of 3 moved in. A father, his wife, and their daughter. Their last name was Sampson. They were greeted the way newcomers often were in those days. Polite but cautious, neutral hellos. Quick nods, people watching to see what kind of work they did, whether they'd stay through winter, whether they'd cause trouble or become part of the rhythm. About a week later, once everyone felt sure they weren't just passing through, the town welcomed them more formally. The father worked in construction and helped build the town hall. The mother got a job at the town's only diner, Laverty's, which served coffee strong enough to wake the dead and pie that people still talk about. The daughter was 14. There was no school in town at the time, so older kids helped watch younger kids. It wasn't official childcare. It was simply what happened when adults needed to work and the town was too small for anything organized. The Samson girl spent a lot of time with the children, along with other girls close to her age and the wife of one of the former politicians. People remembered her as kind. That's always the first word they use. Kind, generous, patient. The sort of teenager who treated little kids like they mattered, who listened to them, who tied their shoes, who broke up arguments before they became fistfights. Of course, kindness in a small town always comes with rules. She got scolded for little things, for taking food from the public kitchen to give to the kids, for letting them wander too far when they played. It wasn't that she meant harm, everyone admitted that. It was that the town had boundaries, visible and invisible, and a young girl didn't get to decide where they were. Each time she was corrected, she worked hard to earn back trust. She apologized. She adjusted. She tried again. The kids themselves begged adults to forgive her whenever someone got too angry. They loved her. They argued for her in their small, loud ways. It got to the point where one sermon in the Methodist church asked the town to forgive her, guide her, help her grow into her kindness, without letting her be careless. That detail gets repeated because it shows how the town saw her. Not bad, not dangerous, just too open-hearted for a place that still believed safety came from strict limits. In 1958, while she was watching the children, she met Marcus Sloan. Marcus had lived in town since 1952, which made him one of the earlier arrivals after the pig farm family. People described him as quiet but steady, the kind of young man who learned routines and kept them. He had brothers, a mother, a father people called Pops. He worked, he attended church, he showed up when the town needed hands. Their first conversations were normal, light banter, nothing heavy. A small friendship forming in the way it often does in places where there aren't many options for new faces. Nothing happened immediately after that. Not publicly, anyway. Weeks went by and the town stayed busy. The town center had been completed 2 months before, and the leaders decided to hold a communal feast to celebrate. It wasn't fancy. It was what they could manage. Long tables, shared dishes, people bringing what they had, the smell of meat and bread, voices and laughter bouncing against the new buildings like the town was testing out its own existence. During the feast, there were speeches, praise for the families who worked, special praise for the original pig farm family, because everyone still treated them like the roots of the town, even if they didn't always like them. That night, Marcus spoke with the Sampson girl. People later said he tried to tell her something personal. Feelings, but not in a dramatic way. More like a confession he couldn't keep locked inside anymore, something he wanted her to know so he could breathe again. She brushed him off. That's how the story is told. She brushed him off, too quickly, too coldly, as if she didn't understand what it cost him to speak. One of her friends noticed. This friend later said it felt unkind, not because the Sampson girl owed Marcus affection, but because Marcus looked crushed and tried to hide it. The friend believed the rejection landed like a stone in his chest. After the feast, life went on. Farming, working, building up the town square, setting up facilities including talk of a police station. The town was still small enough that everything felt like a project everyone carried together. But there was a tension now. Marcus went to speak to her a few times that week. Each time she dismissed him. She started telling her friends he was bothering her, that he kept coming around, that he wouldn't let it go. Among the girls she confided in, opinions split. Some agreed with her, saying a boy should accept no and step back. Others, especially the friend who saw Marcus at the feast, said Marcus seemed heavy-hearted, not dangerous, that he was hurt and didn't know how to handle it. The Sampson girl didn't fully take either side. She didn't decide Marcus was a villain, but she also didn't do anything to mend the awkwardness. She kept moving as if it would fade away if she ignored it long enough. It didn't. Marcus's brothers and even a close friend in town could sense something unrelenting in him. He wasn't raging openly. He wasn't causing scenes. But something in him tightened. He carried the hurt like a secret. When a girl from Sampson's circle tried to speak with him, he did open up a little. He admitted he felt belittled, dismissed, made small. But talking didn't remove it. The resentment stayed buried but alive. It came to a head on a day when the Sampson girl was alone. People never agree on the exact location. Some say it was behind one of the newer buildings. Some say it was near the edge of the fields where the town thinned back into land. The consistent detail is that she was separated from the others, without the children nearby, without friends within shouting distance. Marcus confronted her. At first, she tried to dismiss him again, like she'd done before. She wanted the conversation to end fast, to vanish. He accused her of treating him like he didn't matter, of brushing him off like his feelings were nothing, of looking down at him. He spoke with bitterness that had been collecting for weeks. She tried to calm him. She tried to de-escalate. But then she betrayed herself with a tone that sounded condescending, a way of speaking to him that might have worked on a child, but not on a grown young man whose pride was already bleeding. Something in Marcus snapped. He grabbed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't confused. It was a sudden, angry grip, as if all his suppressed feelings rushed out at once and needed something to hold. She tried to call for help. He clamped his hand over her mouth, pressing hard enough to force her lips shut. Now it wasn't awkward tension anymore. Now it was violence. They struggled. People later described it like two bodies fighting for control. One driven by rage, the other by survival. Marcus looked like he might truly hurt her. The Samson girl fought like she had no choice, trying to break his grip, trying to free her arm, trying to twist away and run. And then, in a sudden moment neither of them expected, they were thrown down into the dirt. Not tripped. Thrown. Both of them, hard like an unseen hand, grabbed the situation and slammed it flat. They hit the ground and lay there shocked. Scratched, shaken, but not badly injured. They tried to get up. They couldn't. They were pinned. Hands gripped their wrists from above, holding them down like children caught misbehaving, except the strength felt wrong, too heavy, too certain. They turned their heads, and there was someone else there, a third person standing over them. That moment is where the records always become strange, because nobody describes it the same way, yet the pieces match in a way that makes my skin tighten. In the weeks after, Marcus and the Samson girl avoided each other completely. At Sunday sermons, they sat on opposite sides. At town meetings about new tools or new projects, they kept their eyes down. If their families crossed paths, it was stiff politeness and quick exits. When Marcus and the Samson girl saw each other, their faces carried the same uneasy look, like people who shared a secret they didn't have language for. Outwardly, their lives continued. Marcus eventually married. He found another woman who gave him kindness and built a home with him. The Samson girl stayed single, but she was close to a work associate, a compassionate relationship that people in town noticed without naming. She stayed involved. She kept helping. She remained, in most ways, the kind girl everyone remembered. But whenever Marcus and she crossed paths, there was always that timid, suppressed uneasiness. Not the awkwardness of two people who once argued, but the fear of two people who saw something they weren't supposed to see. Years later, a statement from Marcus was recorded, passed down through his eldest daughter, Olivia, and kept alongside town documents. In it, he tried to explain what happened that day without fully explaining it. He said he looked up and saw the old man from the pig farm, the grandfather. The dead grandfather, Marcus described him as angry and almost tearful in his anger, like shame and rage were twisting together. Marcus said he was stunned, frozen, and the old man gestured to him with an open hand. Not pointing, not waving, but a firm gesture that said, "Look at what you're doing. Look at yourself." Marcus remembered feeling a sharp nick on his side. When he looked back again, the old man was gone. Marcus wrote that he wanted to get Elvira. He used her first name there. But when she looked at him, her eyes were disturbed, like she'd seen the same thing and it broke something in her. Marcus said he fled. He ran into the field until the panic faded enough for his brain to work again. He came home late. His father was furious. His mother was worried sick. His brothers were confused. He never told them what he'd tried to do to Elvira, and he never told them what happened to both of them that day. Marcus lived a full life after that, though not without shadows. He died of heart disease, something that ran in his family, about 2 weeks after the transit of Mercury, an event recorded as lasting from 1235 to 1804. His wife died the following year. They left behind 3 daughters. Elvira Samson's account survived too, though not in her own hand in the way Marcus's did. It was preserved in memoirs penned later by her work associate Tina Punaipout, who said Elvira always became heavy-hearted when she spoke about it, like the memory carried weight she couldn't set down. Elvira's recollection described the moment before everything changed. She said she didn't see the man at first. She pressed herself against the building wall, shaken, and saw a man looking down at Marcus. An elderly man, bald with thin hair at the back, sideburns, and a grim expression that still looked clear, focused, real. She looked away briefly, as if expecting someone to come, as if hoping the town would suddenly appear and make the situation ordinary again. When she looked back, the man had his arm on her left shoulder. He was staring at her deeply. Elvira said he looked furious, but not with the wild anger of someone about to strike. It was fury mixed with disbelief and shame, like he couldn't accept what he was seeing in the living. She didn't know what to say. She couldn't move. She stared at him for what felt like hours. Then she saw Marcus scramble up and run. And when she looked again, the old man was gone. Elvira returned to the other girls and the children later. Nobody seemed to have noticed. She was missing. One girl, Melissa, asked where she'd been and what happened. Elvira hadn't even realized her dress was dirty or that she had a small nick on her cheek and ear. She lied. She said she dropped something she'd gone to fetch and slipped on the way back. She couldn't even remember what the something was supposed to be, which made the lie weaker. Melissa didn't seem to believe her, but she didn't press. Elvira lived a long life. She died not long after Pope Benedict XVI resigned, which Tina used as a way to date the time when she told the story again, heavy and tired, like she'd been carrying it for decades. Tina's first edition of the memoir was stored in the town records. Marcus's statement was stored with it as a corroborating section provided by Olivia. Those records were kept in the Pig Farm family home at first. The town didn't have an official records room in the early days, so papers were stored wherever there was space, and the farmhouse basement was the safest, driest place available. Later, after the old man's son decided to build a new home after his father went to push up daisies, he didn't want to demolish the original farmhouse. He needed money for the new build and the land, and the town needed a space. So he let the townsfolk repurpose the old property instead. Over time, the farmhouse became a public museum of sorts. Eventually, it was restored properly and received conservation updates, and today it stands as a heritage site for the town. The pig farm itself is still in operation, though the original barn and stable were rebuilt in the late 1970s and again in 2013. The younger sister of the son maintains much of the heritage property now. She was the one who arranged the basement to act as a temporary records warehouse until the town hall finally established an official records room. So the story remains in the files, sitting in a place that smells faintly of old wood and paper and earth, and the part that people still whisper about, the part that keeps the town's early history from ever feeling clean, is the idea that for one moment in 1958, two young people were forced down into the dirt by hands they couldn't see, and then looked up to find an old man who should have been dead standing over them in grief-struck anger. As if the town's foundation itself had risen to stop something shameful before it became permanent. Nobody ever found a clean explanation for the scratches, the nicks, the missing time, or the way both accounts described the same face. And in a town built quite literally over that old man's grave, people learned to be careful about what they did when they thought they were alone. Story 4. Hey honey, your dad and I just made port, so I just got a signal. Listen, I know Grandpa left you the business in his will, but I think we both know that if he was in his right mind in the end, he would have given it to your father and I, so we need you to be a good boy and just sign it over to us. Oh! And Dad and I could really use the money he mistakenly left you, so can you go ahead and wire that to us? Thank you, sweetie. Hope you're well. We're going to a local beach bar with this couple from Cabin 3. Love you. Miss you. That was the email my mother sent me. I deleted it immediately. She's out of her mind, like always. Greg, too. My grandparents built this business from nothing and poured their whole lives into it. And now my mother and stepdad want to sell it so they can fund some wandering swingers cruise or whatever their new chapter is this year. Yeah. No, my name is Josh, and I am the owner and proprietor of Burbeck Estate Solutions. We manage estates for the recently deceased as a service to their families. My grandparents ran this company together for over 50 years. They practically raised me, and they had me tagging along since I was little, so the business has been part of my life for as long as I can remember. They passed a few months ago. I dropped everything to fly back for the funerals, and then I stayed. Being left almost everything in the will was a surprise, but I've been trying to run the place the way they would have wanted. Saying goodbye was rough, though. I haven't slept right since I got back. I don't feel like myself. My therapist says I'm depressed and suggested I start journaling to process my grief, so I figured I'd do it online. Maybe I'll end up with a friend or two, and my job is unusual enough that I know some of you will want details. Also, it helps that none of you can find me. Here's the basics. When someone dies, their family or the estate takes whatever they want. Then we come in and handle what's left. We sort valuables, sell what's worth something, haul away the junk, and deal with anything hazardous. And hazardous can mean anything from used motor oil to a puzzle box that opens the wrong door in the world and invites something through it that never lets go. You really don't know what you're walking into until you're already inside it. I'm going to try to sleep now. I've got a new intern starting tomorrow, and I want to make a good impression this time. 1, 1, 2. Monday. My alarm was set for 5 a.m. I wanted time to get everything ready for the new intern's first day, but I woke up an hour early to the sound of metal scraping and someone grunting outside in the parking lot. My first thought was that some junkie was under my car. I threw on a sweatshirt, ran downstairs, pushed through the storefront, and burst out the front doors into the cold. The parking lot lights were still on. The place was mostly empty, just asphalt and shadows. And in the closest spot to the door, a pair of legs stuck out from under a minivan that looked like it had been built from other, less fortunate minivans. "The hell are you doing under there?" I snapped. There was a solid thud of a skull hitting an undercarriage, a pained groan, and then the kid slid out from under the van on a piece of cardboard. He was rubbing his forehead, wincing, but the expression turned into a wide, dumb grin when he saw me. "Mr. Burbeck, good morning. I know I'm a little early, but my starter was going to give out any day now, and I didn't want to be late, so I figured I'd just change it here. Besides, the floodlights are great for engine work, and I blinked the sleep out of my eyes and noticed a dark liquid pooling beneath the van. Starter, huh? Is that what's causing you to bleed your car dry all over my pavement?" His smile fell. "Ah, shit. I'm sorry, sir. I'll clean it up right away. What's your name again?" I asked. Toby. "Sir?" "Toby," I repeated. "Okay. First task as the Burbeck intern. Storage closet around the corner. Get the cat litter and clean this up. I can't have stains all over the lot. When you're done, come inside, out of the cold." "Yes, sir. Right away, sir," he said, already sprinting off. "And stop calling me sir," I yelled after him. "I'm only 24. The kind of smell that sticks in the back of your nose even when you've been away from the building for days." It wasn't 20 minutes before the bell above the door jingled and Toby came in, blowing into his hands. "Nice shop you got here, sir?" Josh. He walked toward the counter, glancing down the cramped aisles full of stagnant inventory, as my grandma used to call it. Shelves of lamps and clocks, stacks of framed photos nobody wanted, old jewelry boxes, vases, everything waiting to be sorted into sell, trash, or something worse. For the first time, I really looked at him. Maybe 5'7", around 160 pounds. He said he was 18, but he looked 12. Messy brown hair sticking out from under a dirty hat, a thin little mustache trying its best. Skate shoes that had clearly survived fights with concrete, jeans with a hole in one knee, a hoodie with two faces blending together and some script above it, maybe a metal band, maybe just internet art. "Thanks," I said. My grandparents put a lot of love into it. I handed him a cup of coffee I'd poured. "So, why'd you answer the ad? Why do you want to intern here?" He took a sip like it was the best thing he'd tasted all week. "My dad's threatening to kick me out if I don't do something with my life," he said. "And honestly, I've heard rumors about this place since high school." It sounded cool. I raised an eyebrow. "Rumors? Like what?" He swirled the coffee nervously. "Well, Some people say you're a vampire creature hoarding evil objects to gain power. I stared at him. Me? Why me? He shrugged awkwardly. The dark circles under your eyes. And people don't really see you around town. That's what I heard. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's not even how vampires work? Is that it? No, he said quickly. Some people think you work for the government, finding supernatural or alien objects for them to study, like they're building superweapons. And then there's the gray man. The gray man? I repeated. Toby leaned in like we were sharing a secret. People say he's extra-dimensional or demonic, that your grandparents trapped him and forced him to work for them, or that he haunted them. And if you get on his bad side, he comes to you in your dreams. I rolled my eyes. This kid was going to be a lot. I leaned under the counter, grabbed a thick binder, and shoved it across to him. Here, field manual, rules and procedures. Read it when you can. It's easier than learning the hard way. I glanced through the front window and saw a familiar utility van pulling in. Looks like Victor's here. Come on, I'll introduce you. I headed toward the loading bay to open the garage door. Toby followed close, then whispered, "Wait, is that him?" "What guy?" I asked, grabbing the chain. "The gray man." I let go and pinched the bridge of my nose. "Don't call him that. His name is Victor. He's been working here longer than I've been alive." By the bay door, an old framed picture hung crooked on the wall. My grandparents took it when they bought this building 50 years ago. In the photo, there was Victor, same bald head, same gray complexion, same blank stare, standing beside them like he'd always been part of the place. The van rolled around outside. I found myself thinking about how little I actually knew about him. I'd never heard him speak a real word, not once. He grunted, and if grunts can have accents, his had a Russian one. "He's a good guy," I told Toby. "Hard worker, knows this job inside and out. I've never seen him hurt anyone, but I wouldn't push it." Toby's eyes went wide and all the color drained from his face. I turned and Victor was already approaching. Grayish skin, bald head, blue work jumpsuit, heavy boots, the same expressionless face he always had, like his emotions had been filed away years ago. "Morning, Victor," I said. Then to Toby, "Toby, this is Victor." Victor grunted. Toby waved like his hand didn't belong to him. "Help Victor load up," I said. "We're leaving in 5. I'm grabbing paperwork." Toby went to the boxes, careful not to turn his back fully. Victor didn't even look at him. I printed out the 3 job sheets, grabbed my keys and cigarettes, and went back down. Victor was checking the seal on our lead-lined box with his thumb, searching for cracks. When he was satisfied, he moved to his axe and ran the same thumb along the edge to check sharpness. Toby was staring at the axe like it had looked at him first. Victor loaded the last gear. Toby and I climbed into my car. Victor followed in the van. As soon as we pulled out, Toby started, "That's totally him. Oh my God, that is so cool. Did you hear the way he grunted? Is he a ghost? A zombie? A vampire? Is that why you know how vampires work?" "Rule number 1, I said. "This is a job, not an adventure. We're here to work, not chase internet conspiracies. If you can't handle that, tell me now." "Yes, sir," he said quickly. "Sorry, I'm just excited." "Don't call me sir," I said. Then I sighed. "But okay, basic professionalism, deal?" "Deal." "Good. Quick overview. When we get to a location, we sticker everything with one of 3 colors. Green, red, black. Green means valuable, can sell. Red means trash. Black means... We'll get into that later." Toby nodded like he was trying hard to be normal. We drove into a nicer part of town where the houses got larger and newer. Toby's eyes glued to the window. "Josh, look at the size of these houses. We call them mini mansions," I said. "They'll lose their magic after you do enough of these." "Are you kidding? Look at them. What do they even put in all those rooms?" I don't know, I said. They're usually cleaned out by the time we get there. The first house was exactly what Toby expected. 2-story, manicured lawn, hedges. We worked it in about 2 hours. Victor moved furniture like the laws of weight didn't apply to him. At one point, he dragged a sofa with one hand while shouldering a replica suit of armor like it was a grocery bag. Toby kept looking at him like he was waiting for Victor to crack open and reveal a robot skeleton. When we finished, washer and dryer, a few small antiques, some decent electronics, we loaded up. In the car, Toby shrugged. It seems like we're just moving old stuff out of people's houses. It's not what I expected. Yeah, that's most of it. There is more. But for now, I dropped the manual into his lap. Read this. It will save you from going blind or dying. He gave me a look like I was joking, then opened it anyway, flipping through. We drove out to the country. Dirt road, old farmhouses, fields. The sky went gray and heavy. Toby stretched and pointed toward a backyard behind our next house. What's with that tree? What tree? That one. It's got black leaves. That's birds. Probably crows. What? No way. That would be hundreds of crows. I kept looking. Yeah, I said quietly. Probably hundreds. The van pulled in behind us and the timing felt wrong, like something had waited for us to arrive. Toby grabbed sticker rolls and we walked toward the house. Halfway across the yard, the birds lifted from the tree and swarmed overhead, a dark moving sheet. This is getting spooky, Josh. Don't get excited, I said. Remember the manual. Don't touch anything that looks out of place. Also, don't touch anything that looks too normal. That's not helpful. It is if you learn what it means. We forced the front door open with Victor's help. It had been sealed with boards and nails. Inside, the air hit us like wet cloth. Mildew, old water, a funk that made the back of my throat tighten. This house looked like it had been dropped into a pond and then set back on land without being cleaned. Living room in front, small kitchen, dining table, hallway with closed doors. Everything swollen with damp, but not ruined enough to explain the smell. We turned on headlamps. I pulled Toby aside. You sticker the front rooms, I said. I'll take the back. Meet in the middle. Probably not much green here, but we do it right anyway. He nodded, trying to look brave. And we split. I went into what looked like the master bedroom. A king bed with deep slashes and old bloodstains. Melted candles on nightstands. Wax hardened into the rug. A dresser full of clothes. A cheap, made-in-China dagger, a personal massager, and a blue and white vase that might actually be worth something. I was staring at the vase, trying to decide if it was real or a modern imitation, when a scream snapped me out of it. Josh! Oh God, help. The temperature dropped hard as soon as I crossed the hallway. Not gradual, instant. Like someone opened a freezer door into the house. Toby was on his back, heels digging into the carpet as he scrambled away from something crawling out of an open jewelry box. It looked like the burned top half of a girl, maybe 9 years old, translucent and smoking at the edges. Her body dissolved into wisps at the hips, the smoke tethered to the music box like an umbilical cord. The jewelry box was playing a warped, dissonant version of its original song, and a tiny ballerina spun inside the lid like it didn't care what was happening in front of it. The worst part was the sound in my head. Just looking at the thing made a loud ringing start behind my eyes. Toby looked like he was about to throw up. He couldn't blink, like the sight had pinned him in place. I walked over and kicked the music box lid shut with my foot. The ghost snapped backward into the box like it had been yanked. The temperature eased. The ringing faded. Toby just lay there, breathing fast, staring at the closed box like it might open itself again. I rubbed my temples and looked down at him. You okay? He was pale, not shaken pale, more like his body had drained the blood from his face to keep his heart from stopping. Toby, I said louder, you okay? His mouth opened. No sound came out. This is why we read the manual, I said. I think I'm going to be sick, he managed finally. Go help Victor outside with the shredder, I told him. I'll finish in here. He bolted out like he thought the roof would collapse. Clearing the rest of the house was easy after that. The place was scheduled to be leveled, so we weren't even doing a full clean-out. Mostly just making sure there was nothing valuable or dangerous left behind. When we were packed up, Toby stared out the window the whole time I got in the car. You okay, kid? I asked, checking my email for updates. Yeah, he murmured. I'm okay. You can talk to me, I said. That was a low-level haunting. Not usually dangerous, but it's a lot the first time. He swallowed and turned toward me. It's not just that. I've been reading about this stuff since I was a kid. People called me a freak, but I didn't care because I thought it was my calling. Catching ghosts, solving paranormal mysteries. And then I saw that thing and I turned into... He turned away. I froze. You just handled it like it was nothing. Now I feel like I wasted all that time. Something about that hit me harder than I expected. It was the first real thing he'd said all day. It felt like the first time I saw him as a person instead of a kid who talked too much. It doesn't happen overnight, I said. And I'm going to say it again. Read the manual like your life depends on it. You'll handle worse in no time. He looked horrified. There's worse than that? How? She didn't have eyes. She told me things about me she couldn't have known. I hadn't heard any of that, but I believed him. Some of them talk. Some of them don't use mouths. Oh yeah, I said, then realized too late I was answering honestly. There's worse. There are things that swap with you, trap you in objects. There are genies, those are real, and the three wishes always. I stopped when I saw his face. I'd said too much. I cleared my throat and looked back at my phone. Sorry. A new email hit my inbox from the familiar missing sender address that shouldn't be able to exist. It read, Forensic cleaners still working next location. Job pushed till tomorrow. Pickup push to tonight. I sighed. I hated when pickup dates changed. Good news? I said. Next job is tomorrow, so we're done for today. Toby stayed quiet. I started the car. Victor followed in the van. Back at the shop, Toby got out and stood there with the manual in his lap like it was heavier than it should be. You coming back tomorrow? I asked. He muttered, yeah, and climbed into his van. A minute later, he was gone. Victor pulled in after, slow and steady. We opened the docking bay and made short work of sorting and pricing the green label items. Victor moved them onto the sales floor without wasting motion. You think he's coming back? I asked. Victor didn't respond, as usual. But the question hung in the air, and I realized something that surprised me. I liked having someone around to talk to. Victor listened, sure, but it wasn't the same. I didn't even remember the last time I'd had a normal conversation with anyone. We wrapped around 9 p.m. Pickup wasn't until midnight. I'll be upstairs. I called to Victor. Buzz me when they get here. He grunted in response. I did bookkeeping in my office, work I'd been neglecting lately until the buzzer went off a few hours later. They were here. I closed my laptop, took a breath, and went downstairs. Victor was waiting by the heavy warehouse door. I remembered the first time I'd seen it after my grandparents had it installed. Keypads, scanners, locks. The sheer weight of it made it clear something important was kept behind it. Now it was just annoying. A ritual. I entered my code, scanned my thumb. Victor did his retinal scan. Locks clicked in quick succession. Victor pulled the door open. The warehouse lights snapped on as the motion sensors triggered. Rows of wooden crates stacked 15 feet high made a checkerboard lattice through the room. Safety lockboxes lined the walls. Our footsteps echoed off glossy concrete as we walked toward the back. There was a yellow line painted on the floor. Only Victor was allowed to cross it, and only to deposit items into the lead chest. Go ahead and drop today's stuff before they get here, I told him. He carried a small metal box to the chest, knelt, opened both with ease, and transferred the music box from the house. He closed everything and stepped back to stand beside me. Then the roll-up garage door hissed open. A black armored truck rolled in, pivoted, and backed up to the rear of the warehouse. The doors opened and cold fog spilled out, along with the hiss of a seal breaking. 2 guards climbed out first, both wearing armor and carrying rifles slung across their backs. They moved like machines, taking positions at the doors. A 3rd person climbed down behind them. He wasn't a soldier. He wore a sterile white lab suit that looked wrong against our dusty concrete. He held a high-tech scanner in trembling hands and kept looking toward the shadows between crates like he expected something to move. One of the guards shoved him forward, not gently. The scientist stumbled closer to the chest and raised the scanner as Victor opened it. The scientist scanned each item while Victor transferred them one by one into the containment system. The music box, a doll, an antique revolver, a hand mirror, then, last, something that made my stomach tighten in a different way. An N64 cartridge of The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. I remembered playing my older brother's copy when I was a kid. We played a lot when he got sick. It was the only time he seemed happy, showing me secrets in the game like they mattered more than anything else. When he died, I inherited the cartridge. Somewhere along the years, it vanished, stolen or lost. I hadn't seen one since. Of course, the first one I saw again had to be contaminated. The scanner chirped. The scientist flinched like the sound hurt him. He grabbed the cartridge and shoved it into a high-tech containment case covered in lights and gauges. "Package is secure," one guard barked. "Prep for evac." The scientist didn't wait. He ran back into the fog-filled truck with the case in his arms. The guards followed, slammed the doors, and the truck pulled out as the garage door rolled up automatically. The warehouse went quiet again, just concrete and crates and our footsteps. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. We walked back toward the storefront. "Oh," I said, trying to sound casual. "We're starting a little late tomorrow. I need sleep. Be here at 8. Victor grunted in agreement. "I'm in bed now. The shop is locked. The warehouse is sealed. The lights are off. I'm hoping I can sleep. And I'm hoping Toby comes back tomorrow. I think he will. He did better than he realizes. But in this line of work, hope is always a risky thing to keep." Story 5. The rusted swing set made the same tired sound every afternoon, a slow creak and crunch that seemed to follow Mia through most of her childhood. It was the sound of metal chains rubbing together, of old bolts shifting in the cold air, of wood chips scraping beneath her worn-out sneakers. To other children, the schoolyard was loud and full of life. It was a place for running, shouting, laughing, and making up games that only made sense to the kids playing them. But to Mia, it always felt like a place she had been forgotten in. At 9 years old, Mia had already learned how to disappear without actually leaving. She could sit on the black rubber seat of a swing at the far edge of the playground and become almost invisible. The other children barely looked her way anymore. At first, that had hurt. She used to wait for someone to ask her to join a game, to call her name, to save her a place in the circle of friends. But no one did. After a while, she stopped expecting it. She stopped hoping. She just sat there, kicking her scuffed shoes into the wood chips, swinging only high enough to make the chains groan. The swing set stood near the edge of the woods, where the schoolyard ended and the trees began. Teachers always told the children not to go past the fence, not to wander into the trees, not to follow the dirt path that curled through the shadows. Most children listened because they were too busy with each other to care about the woods. Mia listened because she was afraid of being noticed for doing something wrong. She was a quiet child, the kind adults described as well-behaved when what they really meant was lonely. Her mother worked long hours and always came home tired. She loved Mia, but love did not always fill the empty spaces in a house. Some nights her mother would fall asleep on the couch with one hand still wrapped around a mug of cold tea. Mia would cover her with a blanket, turn down the television, and go to bed without saying goodnight. At school, things were not much better. The other children had already formed their groups, and Mia had somehow ended up outside all of them. She was never bullied in any dramatic way. No one pushed her into lockers or stole her lunch. They simply moved around her as if she were a chair, a tree, or a patch of empty air. So the loneliness became normal. It stopped feeling like a sharp pain and turned into something heavier and duller, like fog pressing against her chest. It followed her in the classroom, at lunch, on the walk home, and especially on the swing by the woods. She had almost accepted it as part of life. Then, one afternoon, the fog turned red. It was late in the fall, the kind of afternoon where the sky looked pale and tired. The wind had stripped most of the leaves from the trees, and the ground was covered in brown and gold scraps that dragged across the playground whenever the breeze picked up. Mia sat on the swing, as usual, watching the other kids play a game she had not been invited to join. Their voices were loud but far away. She could hear them, but it felt like listening through a wall. That was when she saw something move near the tree line. At first, it was only a flash of red. Mia thought it might be a bird or a piece of fabric caught on a branch. But then the red shape moved forward, stepping out from between two trees as if it had been waiting there the whole time. It was a girl. She looked about Mia's age, maybe 9 or 10. She was small and pale, with a narrow face and large eyes. Her clothes were strange for a schoolyard. She wore a soft pink dress with puffy sleeves, the kind of dress someone might wear for a birthday party or a picture day, not for standing near a muddy path behind the playground. Over it, she had a thick red sweater, even brighter than the leaves around her. Her stockings were red too, so red they almost seemed to glow. But the brightest thing about her was her hair. It hung around her shoulders in loose waves, a deep crimson color that looked too vivid to be real. Not orange, not auburn, but red like fresh paint, red like berries crushed between fingers. Mia stared, unsure whether to call for a teacher or run away. The girl stepped closer, and the wind seemed to stop around her. "I'm Rosie," the girl said. Her voice was soft but dry, like wind moving through dead leaves. Mia swallowed. "I'm Mia." "I know," Rosie said, smiling. That should have scared Mia. Maybe some part of her was scared, but the girl's smile was warm and bright, and Mia had been alone for so long that fear did not come quickly enough. Rosie held out one hand. In her palm was a small pile of strawberries. They were the deepest red Mia had ever seen. Their skin shone as if they had just been washed, and juice clung to them in thick drops. They looked strange against Rosie's pale fingers. Too perfect, too ripe for the season. "Do you want a snack?" Rosie asked. Mia looked toward the other children. No one was watching her. No teacher had noticed the strange girl by the woods. The playground kept moving around them like nothing was wrong. "I don't know," Mia said quietly. "Where did you get them?" "From my garden," Rosie said. "They're sweet." She knew she should not take food from strangers. But Rosie did not feel like a stranger. Not exactly. She felt like an answer to a question Mia had been too sad to ask out loud. So Mia took one strawberry and bit into it. The sweetness flooded her mouth so strongly that she almost gasped. It was better than any strawberry she had ever tasted. It was warm and cold at the same time, sugary and sharp, and the juice ran down her chin before she could wipe it away. For a second, the whole playground seemed brighter. The gray clouds above her took on a faint purple glow. The dead leaves looked golden, and Rosie's red hair burned like fire in the corner of her vision. "See?" Rosie said. "I told you." Mia smiled before she could stop herself. From that day on, Mia was not alone. At first, Rosie was everything Mia had wanted in a friend. She came to the schoolyard every afternoon, always from the tree line, always when Mia was by herself. No one else seemed to notice her, but that did not bother Mia as much as it should have. When she asked Rosie why the teachers never called her inside, Rosie laughed and said grown-ups were bad at seeing important things. Mia accepted that because she wanted to accept it. They played for hours. Rosie danced more than she walked, spinning across the wood chips in pink ballet shoes that never seemed to get dirty. Her red hair whipped around her like a ribbon of flame. She made up games with strange rules and stranger names. They played Queen of the Red Garden, where Mia had to gather fallen leaves and place them in circles around the swing set. They played Mirror Girl, where Rosie stood very still and copied every move Mia made, sometimes a second too late, sometimes a second too early. They played hide and seek near the woods, though Rosie always hid too well and came back with dirt under her nails. Mia's favorite game, at first, was the one Rosie called Coloring the World. Rosie said it was her special trick. She told Mia that only her closest friends could see it. All she had to do was lift one hand and wave her fingers through the air, and the world around them would change. The first time it happened, Mia forgot how to breathe. The schoolyard had been gray and dull, the grass thin and muddy, the sky heavy with clouds. Then Rosie raised her hand and color spilled over everything like paint poured from the sky. The grass turned a glowing green. The sky deepened into purple and blue, like the bruised skin of a plum. The trees became tall black shapes with red leaves that had not been there before. Even the other children in the distance blurred and softened, their voices fading until they sounded like they were underwater. Everything felt warm and dreamlike. The air smelled like sugar and wet earth. Mia could not feel the cold on her fingers anymore. "It's better when I color it, isn't it?" Rosie whispered, leaning close. Mia nodded. "Don't you wish it could stay like this forever?" Mia looked at the playground, now shining and strange, and for a moment she did. She wished she could live inside that color, where nothing looked lonely and nothing felt empty. She wished the whole world could be soft and bright and sweet like Rosie's strawberries. For 4 weeks, Mia was happy in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. She began rushing through school just so she could get to the swing set. She stopped trying to talk to the other kids because she had Rosie now. When her mother asked why she seemed so cheerful, Mia only shrugged and said school was fine. She thought about telling her mother about Rosie, but something always stopped her. It felt like a secret, and Rosie liked secrets. "Friends should have secrets," Rosie said one day while they sat under the swing set sharing strawberries from Rosie's garden. "If you tell people everything, they take it from you." "My mom wouldn't take you," Mia said. Rosie's smile faded a little. "You don't know that. I'm only teasing," she said. "You're my best friend." Mia had never been anyone's best friend before. As autumn bled into winter, though, the coloring started to feel different. At first, the colors had been beautiful. They made the park feel magical, almost safe. But slowly, the reds grew stronger. They crept into everything. The trees no longer looked black with bright leaves. They looked wet and dark, their trunks shining as if coated in something thick. The purple sky looked less like twilight and more like a bruise spreading across skin. The grass glowed too brightly, almost sickly, and the red leaves on the ground began to look like stains. The strawberries changed too. They were still sweet, but sometimes Mia thought she tasted something underneath the sugar, something sour and spoiled. Once, she bit into one and felt a small crunch that made her stomach twist. She looked down, expecting to see seeds, but the inside of the berry was darker than it should have been, almost black near the center. Rosie watched her closely. "Don't you like it?" Mia forced herself to swallow. "It's good." Rosie smiled again, but her eyes did not soften. "Good." Soon, Rosie stopped playing the way she used to. She no longer spun across the playground or made up silly games. Instead, she watched when Mia sat on the swing. She watched when Mia tied her shoes. She watched from the corner of the classroom window, though Mia sat on the second floor and there was no ledge outside for anyone to stand on. At first, Mia told herself she was imagining it. Rosie could not really be outside the classroom window. Rosie could not really be standing in the hallway near the bathroom, half hidden behind the trophy case. Rosie could not really be at the end of Mia's street at night, her pink dress bright under the orange glow of the street lamp. But she was there, always, and she was becoming impatient. Rosie wanted every second of Mia's time. If Mia stayed after class to talk to a teacher, Rosie would appear behind the teacher's shoulder. only visible to Mia, her head tilted and her mouth pressed into a thin line. If Mia smiled at another girl in class, Rosie would stand near the wall with her hands curled into fists. If Mia sat beside her mother on the couch and leaned against her, Rosie would be reflected in the dark television screen, standing behind them, her red hair hanging over her face. One evening, Mia was helping her mother set the table for dinner. Her mother had made pasta, and the kitchen smelled like tomato sauce and garlic. It was one of the rare nights when her mother was home early, and Mia wanted to enjoy it. She wanted to tell her about school, about the books she had been reading, about how cold the playground had become. Then she saw Rosie in the corner. The girl stood beside the back door, though Mia had not heard it open. Her red stockings were muddy up to the knees. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. Mia froze with a plate in her hands. Her mother turned. "Sweetheart? Are you okay?" Mia looked away from Rosie quickly. "Yeah, I'm fine." Then her voice slipped into Mia's ear, soft and sharp. "She doesn't love you like I do." That night, Rosie appeared in Mia's bedroom after the lights went out. She sat at the end of the bed with her hands folded in her lap, her pink dress spread around her like wilted petals. "You didn't come to the swings today," Rosie said. "I was with my mom," Mia whispered. Rosie stared at her. In the dark, her eyes seemed too large for her face. "Your mom is always tired. She doesn't see you." "She does," Mia said, though her voice shook. "No, she doesn't. They don't love you, Mia." Rosie leaned closer. "The kids at school don't love you. Your teachers don't love you. Your mother loves being tired more than she loves you." "That's not true. I'm the only one who gives you the red fruit," Rosie hissed. "I'm the only one who makes the colors, right? I'm the only one who came when you were crying on that ugly swing." Mia pulled her blanket up to her chin. "Please go home." Rosie's face changed. It was small, but Mia saw it. The soft expression slipped away, and something older looked out through the child's eyes. "I don't have to go anywhere," Rosie said. After that, Mia began to fear the end of each school day. She no longer ran to the swing set. She avoided it whenever she could, but Rosie found her anyway. Sometimes Mia saw red hair in the crowd at dismissal. Sometimes she smelled strawberries in places where there should have been none. Sometimes the world would flash red for a second, and in that second she would see a different place layered over her own. A garden. Not a pretty one. Not the kind with flowers and sunlight. This garden was dark and endless, full of twisted vines and red fog. Things hung from the trees, swaying gently, too high and shadowed for Mia to see clearly. The ground looked soft, like mud, and the air shimmered with the smell of rotten fruit. Somewhere in that fog, children whispered. Mia heard them at night. "Help us. Come play. Don't let her take your hair." Mia stopped eating the strawberries. When Rosie offered them, Mia kept her hands behind her back and said she was not hungry. Rosie's smile became tighter each time. "You loved them before," Rosie said. "I don't want any. You have to eat them if you're my friend." "I don't feel good." Rosie stepped closer. Her fingers looked too long. "Then I'll make you better." She ran across the playground, past the other children, past the teachers, past the front gate, all the way home. Her lungs burned by the time she reached her porch. She slammed the door behind her and locked it, then stood with her back against it, shaking. For a while, nothing happened. Then something tapped softly on the other side of the door. Tap, tap, tap. Mia did not move. A voice whispered through the wood. "You can't lock me out of a place you invited me into." Mia started crying then. Quietly at first, then harder, with her hands over her mouth so her mother would not hear from upstairs. She did not know what Rosie was. She only knew that she had been wrong. Rosie was not a friend. Rosie was not a lonely girl from the woods. Rosie was a shadow that had learned to smile. That night, Mia climbed into bed before her mother even told her to. She pulled the covers over her head and held her stuffed rabbit against her chest. The room was dark except for a small night light plugged in near the dresser. Its weak yellow glow did nothing to warm the air. The cold came first. It seeped into the room slowly, sliding under the door and through the walls. Mia's breath turned white. The glass of water on her nightstand clouded with frost. Then came the smell. Rotting strawberries. Sweet, wet, and spoiled. Mia squeezed her eyes shut. "Go away," she whispered. The floorboards creaked. "I don't want to see you anymore," Mia said, louder this time. Her voice broke as tears ran down her cheeks. "Go away, Rosie, please." The room became so quiet that Mia could hear her own heartbeat. Then Rosie laughed. It was not the laugh Mia remembered from the playground. It was jagged and wet, like someone choking on syrup. It came from the corner of the room, near the closet. Mia slowly lowered the blanket. Rosie stood there in her pink dress and red sweater, but she did not look like a child anymore. Her face was stretched too wide. Her eyes were pale and bright. Her red hair moved around her shoulders as if floating underwater. The skin around her mouth was stained dark, and something red dripped from her fingers onto the floor. "You don't get to send me away," Rosie said. Mia sat up, trembling. "You're not my friend." Rosie smiled, showing teeth that were too small and too many. "I was the best friend you ever had. I don't want you." Rosie's smile vanished. The air behind her split open. It tore like old fabric, ripping from floor to ceiling with a sound that made Mia clap her hands over her ears. Beyond the tier was not her closet wall, not the hallway, not anything that belonged in her house. It was the garden. The red fog churned like smoke. Dark vines twisted through the air. The ground pulsed softly as if something beneath it were breathing. "You're coming to my garden," Rosie said. "The colors never fade there." Mia screamed for her mother, but no sound left the room. It was as if the red fog swallowed her voice before it could reach the door. Rosie reached out. Her fingers stretched as they moved, growing longer and thinner, turning into pale, spindly talons. They wrapped around Mia's arm with a grip as cold as ice. Pain shot up Mia's shoulder. Rosie pulled, and Mia felt her body slide across the mattress. "No!" Mia kicked hard, knocking her blanket to the floor. Rosie pulled again. Mia's feet left the bed. The red tear widened, and the smell of the garden filled the room. Rotten strawberries, wet dirt, copper, and something burnt. Mia could hear children crying from somewhere inside it. The coloring hit her all at once. Her bedroom vanished beneath a blinding red glow. The walls melted into color. Her nightlight became a red star. The furniture stretched and bent. Rosie's face became huge in front of her, smiling and furious, beautiful and terrible. The whole world turned red, and for one awful second, Mia understood what Rosie meant by making the colors right. Rosie did not color the world to make it pretty. She colored it so nothing could escape her. But fear gave Mia strength. As Rosie dragged her toward the tier, Mia twisted her body and slammed one foot against the bedroom doorframe. Her toes burned with pain, but she pushed back with everything she had. Rosie hissed and pulled harder. Mia felt the cold grip cutting into her arm. "You belong with me!" Rosie screamed. "No!" Mia cried. "You were alone." Mia thought of the swing set. She thought of all the afternoons she had spent wishing someone would notice her. She thought of her mother asleep on the couch, tired but still there. She thought of the other children at school and how being ignored had hurt. But not as much as this. Loneliness had made Rosie look kind. Loneliness had opened the door. But it did not mean Mia belonged to her. Mia dug her foot harder into the frame, gripped the edge of her bed with one hand, and screamed the only words that came to her, "You're not real, Rosie." Rosie's eyes widened. Mia screamed again, louder, forcing the words through the red fog. "You're not real," Rosie shrieked, and the sound cracked through the room like glass breaking. Her grip tightened so hard Mia thought her arm would snap, but then something gave way. There was a sickening pop. The connection between them snapped. Rosie flew backward, her talons tearing free from Mia's arm. She tumbled into the red void, her pink dress twisting around her, her face changing into a mask of pure rage. For a moment, she no longer looked like a girl at all. She looked like something made of hunger, wearing a child's shape because it had learned that lonely children trusted other children. "I'll come back," Rosie screamed. "I always come back." The tear slammed shut. The red vanished. Mia fell to the floor, gasping. Her bedroom was dark again. The nightlight flickered weakly. The cold began to fade, leaving behind the sharp scent of ozone and copper. On her arm, pale marks circled her skin where Rosie's fingers had been. Her mother burst into the room seconds later, turning on the light. "Mia, what happened?" "I heard something fall." She only crawled into her mother's arms and sobbed until her throat hurt. Her mother held her tightly, rocking her back and forth, asking what was wrong. Mia tried to say Rosie's name, but every time she did, the air in the room seemed to grow colder. So she said she had a nightmare. She said it again and again until her mother believed her, or at least pretended to. After that night, Rosie was gone. Mia did not see her at the swing set. She did not see her in windows or reflections. The smell of strawberries faded from the house. The strange red flashes stopped. For the first few days, Mia was too frightened to feel relief. She expected Rosie to appear from behind every door. She slept with the light on and kept her bedroom door open. She avoided the park completely, but weeks passed, then months. Winter settled over the town, cold and gray. Snow came and covered the playground in a thin white sheet. The swing set stood frozen and still near the woods. Mia watched it sometimes from the school windows, but she did not go near it. She started sitting with another quiet girl at lunch. They did not talk much at first, but sharing silence with a real person felt different from being alone. At home, Mia stayed closer to her mother. Some nights she helped make dinner. Some nights they watched television together. Her mother still got tired, but Mia began to understand that tired was not the same as empty. 3 months after Rosie disappeared, Mia felt brave enough to look through the attic with her mother. They were searching for old winter coats and a box of holiday lights. The attic smelled like dust, cardboard, and old wood. Mia was sorting through a stack of folders when she found one tied with a faded piece of string. Inside were old local newspaper clippings. At first, Mia did not pay much attention. Her mother had always saved strange things. School notices, weather reports, articles about neighbors they barely knew. But then Mia saw a headline that made her hands go cold. "Local girl missing near park." She stared at the words until they blurred. The article was from several years earlier. A 7-year-old girl had vanished after playing near the same park behind Mia's school. Police had searched the woods for days and found nothing. No footprints, no torn clothing, no signs of where she had gone. Mia turned the page, another clipping, another missing girl. Then another. Over the last decade, several girls had disappeared in the area. Not all in the exact same place, but close enough. Near the park, near the woods, near the old dirt paths that children were told not to follow. Most of the stories were short, sad, and unfinished. The girls had been quiet, shy, often described as lonely, the words repeated from article to article until Mia felt sick. Then she found one that mentioned something else. The mother of one missing girl had told police that her daughter had recently been talking about an imaginary friend. The friend had red hair, wore a pink dress, and brought her sweet red fruit. Mia's breath caught. She kept reading, her hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. Another article described a drawing found in the room of a girl who had vanished. The police had not thought it was important at the time. Children drew imaginary friends all the time. Mia reached into the folder and found the drawing tucked between 2 clippings. It was old and creased, the paper yellow at the edges. The picture had been drawn in crayon by a child's hand. It showed a girl with bright red hair, a pink dress, red stockings, and a smile that was much too wide. Around her were trees, and behind the trees was a cloud of red fog. Underneath the drawing, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Rosie says she needs more friends for her garden. She says the red hair is made of the memories she takes. Mia dropped the paper. A sound came out of her throat, small and broken. She backed away from the folder, shaking her head as if she could push the truth away by refusing to look at it. Rosie had not been born from Mia's loneliness. She had not been imaginary. She had not been a dream or a nightmare that ended when Mia woke up. Rosie was real enough to take children, real enough to wait near the trees with strawberries in her pale hand, real enough to find the lonely ones, the quiet ones, the children who sat by themselves and wished someone would choose them, real enough to make the world bright and soft until they forgot to be afraid, real enough to drag them into that red garden where the colors never faded. Mia thought of Rosie's hair, so bright and beautiful. And then she thought of the words under the drawing. The red hair is made of the memories she takes. Mia pressed both hands over her mouth and cried. She cried for the girls and the clippings. She cried for the voices she had heard in the fog. She cried because she had escaped, and they had not. Most of all, she cried because she understood how close she had come to becoming part of Rosie's garden forever. That evening, Mia stood by her bedroom window and looked out toward the distant line of trees beyond the school. The winter sky was gray, the park was quiet. Nothing moved near the swing set. But as the sun went down, Mia thought she saw a faint red shimmer between the trees. It might have been the sunset. It might have been a trick of the light. It might have been nothing at all. Then the swing at the edge of the playground moved. Just once, a slow creak, then stillness. Mia stepped back from the window and pulled the curtains shut. She knew Rosie was gone from her life, at least for now, but the red fog was still out there. It was waiting in the places adults did not look closely at. It was waiting near empty swings and quiet paths, waiting for the next child who felt unseen, unheard, and a little too alone. And somewhere beyond the trees in a garden where the colors never faded, Rosie was still smiling.